So I finished HiraHira. It's something that was written by Setoguchi, and you could probably tell. You probably heard of him through like Swan Song more than anything else, but I know him more from HiraHira. I don't think he ever wrote a VN that didn't use the MVL format, and really that's one of his strengths. I don't think the AV format would work for him. Sometimes what's being put down is long-winded, but it's always cohesive and you know where he's coming from. The only one that felt off so far was that fan for Kiriki that I still didn't finish. I wasn't really feeling it, and then I saw that he apparently only did scenario draft 4. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense maybe. Anyways, generally what you get from him is spectrum of fun, somber, and stoicism on human nature, and that's basically what revolves around HiraHira. It's about this disease that you can get where you're medically dead for a period of time and then come back to life. The damage done to the person depends on how long it took for them to come back. It can't be cured, but there's medication to slow down the detriments it brings along, meaning loss of brain function alongside your skin constantly degrading to the point you look like a zombie. There's medication for it to severely slow down the process to the point that you can just live a normal life, but the mental aspect can still fuck you up in the routine. Because it's basically like dementia with super lupus. They have delusions, they can't think something is conspiring against them or that the medication is poison and so on. So either you come back kind of okay and deal with the symptoms with the medication, or you're super fucked and become like a husk of a human being. Then comes along that some don't want to take the medication at all. Others don't have the money to take care of these people because they're basically outcasts and they lose their jobs. And then there's others that find the disease isn't going to be solved with medicine and it's more of like a religious curse type of thing. It used to be that the ones that were more heavily afflicted were just pushed into their own like type of prison cells. Eventually there was a law made that makes them so the family or whoever the caretaker is has to make a room inside their house, and then they're just locked in there and they just take care of them over there. And now there's some hospitals that take care of them with the limited space that they have. It's more like a retirement home comboed with like a psychiatric hospital. Consider it like a hospice for these people. There's two plots that you go back and forth from. If you ever read Sorcery Jokers, it's something like that. So there's one plot with this doctor named Masamitsu, and the other one is with Takeo, who's a student living with some of his dad's like friends and his family. Masamitsu was a lot more interesting and the time just flew by. He's a doctor in one of these hospitals, he gets to talk with all these different patients. He eventually gets tasked to go around the country to take notes on these home care cases to basically make a point that they're insufficient to handle this disease and the government has to step it up with making more hospitals and some in-between normal life and like hospital care. The whole basis is that the Hihirus aren't really treated as humans in the public eye, and it's understandable to them considering for the longest time that people thought it was more of a curse and that it can be contagious. Masamitsu is kind of a weirdo, but that's what makes him work. He has a different mindset that works for his occupation, but the general populace would still see him as like a pretty weird guy. Takeo does have his own plot with the Hihiru stuff, but it's a lot more boring considering he's just a student that's studying law. His stuff is more spoilers, so that'll be in the spoiler section, but overall his was fine. Like there's parts that are interesting, especially when it concerns like his friend and his issues with his own specific Hihiru stuff, but overall you can have him removed and a lot of the context would still be around. Maybe it's more of a human approach and how all of this is affecting normal families, but overall kind of whatever considering parts of his plot are just more in-depth sections of the families Masamitsu meets. There's a couple choices, but overall I think maybe only 3 mattered. There's a specific one near the beginning where you can give this poor family some money or just not give them at all. And it's because like, oh, they're trying their best to support this Hihiru thing, but they're fucking poor and there's a recession, so they're even more fucked than ever. And the choice entails more of like, hey, are you more human? Are you more in touch with your emotions, or more like super doctor? Like, no, I'm a researcher, I have to figure these things out. And this does change some dialogue here and there in like the first couple of chapters, but later on it's just forgotten. It's like, he's still the same no matter what. Because then another choice happens, then all of it's depending on that one as well. And I think it leads to the bad ending or the good ending for him. But overall, it was a pretty good time. It's not a VN for everyone, but Setoguchi isn't going to work for everyone anyway. This is closer to normal literature than an actual VN, and I'm all for it. Then again, I have fun reading like traditional books anyway, so maybe it's a very specific niche for it. I don't know. I think it'll still work for most people that are into VNs, but for like the plot, instead of solely like, haha, quirky / cute girls and H scenes and romance and stuff. It's like, no, here's a plot, it's interesting, cool. I'd give it around an 8, that's closer to a 9. It would have been a 9 if it was all about Masamitsu. Most of it is pretty concise and you stay for the writing. It's not breathtaking, there's no impact spikes, it's just well written throughout. There isn't much I'll be spoiling this time around. I mentioned choices before, and I think Takeo has more choices overall. I think he has 3 bad endings overall, but there's one that I didn't try, so either maybe there's 4 bad endings, or that one leads to the same bad ending, which I believe that's what the case is going to be, or you can salvage to a good ending, but I don't know, I didn't check it out. Basically, you need your friend to help you out, and also not run away when shit hits the fan. Either way, Takeo's plot hits home depending on where you are in life, but the thing is Masamitsu hits the same strides. So it's another angle of looking at the subject that's also just not needed. Sure, there's a lot of things like, oh, he's studying law, so maybe he's going to intertwine with the other guy's plot. It's like, okay, here's the medical side, and I'm the law side, and he's going to like push the government to help him to do shit. It's like, okay, we actually need this shit now. And it's like, okay, I know this other character that's always going, she's going to die soon, and she's going to be Hihiru or something. It's like, okay, now he has a reason to do it, now here's his passion, because he's also saying like, oh, I never have passion to do anything, because I just want to help my friends and help my family and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, that's your avenue, except that didn't happen. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna live my normal life. She did die, she became Hihiru, was like, well, I'm gonna live with her anyway. And that was all this thing. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that's fine because that's more normal, I guess. There's a part where Masamitsu contracts a disease, and if it wasn't for like Setoguchi writing it, you'd assume like, oh, he'd make a huge breakthrough to further advance the ways that like they're treating these patients. Or like, oh, maybe I fix it all together, but nothing happens because he just keeps on doing his job. He just appreciates the chance to give it to like, oh, now I understand how they're going through this. And it just expands his worldview on the matter. But otherwise, status quo just stays the same. And I was all for that. Other VNs handle these issues sometimes, but somewhat on the rare side, and it's normally like, oh, here's a miracle, and now I found this, and now this is cured. Like, and there's like, no, fucker, it doesn't work that way. It's an eventual process. You just keep on going until fixed. The thing that made me think more often on the Masamitsu ending is like, they talked about how his reports helped out his superior to get the government to actually like look at the shit and what's going around, and like, okay, we have to make more hospitals. But the abolition of the home care system took like another 30 years. It gave me some Hamilton vibes, but the whole thing is like, I don't understand what it was going for, because it could be like two things, but it's probably just both at the same time. At first you can say like, hey, Masamitsu's mind is still going strong for 30 years later, hell yeah, he's researching all the time, it's great. But really it's shitting on the government how something that was a problem and it was explained and it was given steps to correct it, and it still took them like fucking 30 years to get some traction through. It's like, holy shit, you're so slow. And I don't know if he's shitting on the government altogether, it's like, yeah, these guys just take forever to do anything. Or if it really was like, hey, he's still going on, he's still living, he's a Hihiru, but overall, he's still basically human, there's nothing really wrong with him again.